Barack Obama announcing 300 military advisors close to it are heading to Iraq, but emphasizing that American forces won't be returning to combat. Well, obviously, as we were talking about, is that a distinction without a difference? But the question is, politically, what does this mean for the president? Joining me now, two people who are front and center in knowing this answer. Journalist and author Carl Bernstein and William Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard. Great to have both of you with us. Carl, you're sitting here next to me, but this is a fine line he's walking, that he's trying to do something about it, put in nearly 300 people, say it's not boots on the ground, avoid mission creep, but yet leave the door open to also having airstrikes in Syria. This is tough.
It's tough, but I think he's being prudent, not being reckless like the Bush administration was, to take us into a war that's been one of the unmitigated disasters of American history, that has cost us treasure, lives, and actually helped seed the area to terrorism. It's made Iran the victor in the Iraqi war, and that's where we are now because of what the Bush administration did. And now we're dealing with the consequences in a prudent way, I think. I like what the generals just said, the general and the colonel. I thought that made great sense, both of them.
All right. Well, Bill, you know, it's interesting what Carl's saying. Look, you supported the invasion in 2003, and, you know, Senator Harry Reid, you're probably aware of this, tweeted a picture of you, former Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz, former Vice President Dick Cheney, with the line, quote, "The only thing I want to hear from Iraq War architects is an apology." What's your response?
Well, Harry Reid's not going to get an insincere apology from me. I'm not a politician. I'm not apologizing for something that I think was not wrong. I think going to war to remove Saddam was the right thing to do and necessary and just thing to do. But look, we can debate 2003. Carl can go on about how terrible it was. I could debate what Harry Reid said before the surge, that it couldn't possibly work in 2007. We could go over 2011, the failure to leave a force there, the failure to get involved in Syria, which I think was the real disaster. But I would like to say, in my defense, and I think others who've tried to write things in the last few days, we've tried to look at the situation on the ground and say, let's not even relitigate the past. What do we do now? This is a real crisis. If ISIS dominates a huge chunk of Iraq and Syria and establishes a terrorist state there, that is a crisis for the United States. If Iran extends its borders, in effect, west into Iraq, that is a crisis. So let's have a serious discussion about what to do. And I give the president credit for at least now, I think he's been slow and late, unfortunately, and continues, I think, foolishly to say no combat, no combat, no combat, as if you can guarantee that. But at least he's now acknowledging it is a serious problem that requires U.S. involvement to deal with. We can't just say, we ended the war, we're out of there, forget about it.
I would love to, I actually love the whole conversation of relitigating the original war, just because I love having this conversation.
I'm happy to have it, Aaron, I'm happy to. You have Harry Reid. Let me say my final point on this. Have Harry Reid on, invite Harry Reid to come on this show, and let's debate 2003. He voted for the war, but let's debate whether it was right or wrong. I will do it. Sit here with you and Harry Reid and have a half-hour-long debate. But for him to tweet out, the only thing I want to hear from them is an apology, is that really an appropriate way to conduct yourself as a serious leader of a democracy?
Apologies would be in order at this point from the neoconservatives who banged the war drums so disastrously, Bill.
Hogwash.
Well, I don't think it's hogwash, but I think you're right about one thing. We need to talk about what's happening now. I used the word prudent, and you, Bill, said the president is taking a good look at this thing. We've got a terrible situation, and now it seems to me that he is looking at those alternatives that offer the least risk to us in terms of a commitment of huge numbers of troops, and at the same time setting up the possibility of special forces actions, of airstrikes, all kinds of ways to deal with what is a real terrorist threat, as well as a geopolitical problem that has resulted from the disastrous war in Iraq.
So Dick Cheney, obviously central to the original war here, is not letting up. Now, Carl, after the op-ed in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, which we talked about on this show, he went on Fox News and said it would have been irresponsible not to act in Iraq. But he went further. Now, you just heard the president, right, making the case for why the terrorists in Iraq could threaten America. He made that case today. But Dick Cheney says the president does not recognize there's a war on terror, and here's what he said on Fox.
Barack Obama has stated repeatedly that terrorist threat's gone. We got bin Laden. That's clearly not the case. That's not the truth. And in fact, we have a situation tonight where terrorism is potentially in charge of a larger part of the Middle East than ever before in our history.
Is the president not taking this threat seriously enough?
Of course he's taking it seriously. And also what Cheney said there, he really gave an accusation about the president and how he was endangering the United States. What Cheney really said is what the psychiatrists, I think, call projection, about accusing Obama of doing exactly what Cheney and Bush did, to take us into a disastrous war, put us at risk throughout the world, invite terrorism. That's exactly what happened. And now we're dealing with the consequences and dealing with it seriously.
Well, Bill, I mean, here's the question. I mean, you can go back and say, well, whose fault is it? One thing that Dick Cheney said is true, which is terrorism is potentially in charge of a larger part of the Middle East than they were before. That seems to be a fact. The issue is who's to blame for that. Who's to blame for the rise of all of this? Is it the Bush administration for going into the Iraq War in the first place? Is it the Obama administration? I mean, I know your point of view on this, but it's
right, but I think
the person who started it. This started under the Bush administration.
No, well, it started before the Bush administration, since 9/11 was plotted before the Bush administration. We can go all the way back to the Iranian Revolution, Aaron. I don't think it's a wise debate to have at this time. I think Carl was right when he said just a minute ago. It's a serious matter. I think the one thing I would say is I think Carl's own statement implied the limitation or the problem what the president has said. Carl said we may have to use special operators, we may have to use airstrikes. I think that's right. I think it's imprudent for the president to rule out so unequivocally putting American forces into combat. There may have to be a moment, if there's a genocide going on and there are 300 American special advisors standing 50 miles away, American troops may have to go into combat.
Well, genocide hasn't mattered in Syria, but...
Well, I think that was a mistake there, too, though.
Look, if we were to see a slaughter, if we were to see real genocide, perhaps the president might find a way to bring the world together to act against genocide. We're not talking about that, Bill. I think the president has been very prudent here with a terrible situation, and he deserves the support of neoconservatives at this point.
All right. Thanks very much to both of you. We appreciate it. And please let us know your thoughts, whether you fall on the side of Carl or Bill. And what's happening in Iraq is drawing comparisons to the war in Vietnam. Tonight, CNN's original series